Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Bryndís, and today we're talking about all the books I read in October. So I read so many good books in October. It was fantastic reading month. I don't apologize, but I am having this here. I've been having some issues with my microphone, that it keeps having these static or like interruptions, and everything. I've done everything that Google and YouTube and everybody tell me to do, and it doesn't. It happens sometimes. So I'm gonna see if I have this, I can hear when it is happening and stop filming instead of filming for 5 minutes, listening to or watch it back, and then it's like and I have to film it again. So we'll see. I do have ambitions to get maybe a microphone for my GoPro or just a proper vlogging camera, but at the moment that's not really feasible. But anyway, we're talking about October. It's a little bit late. It's times are a little bit crazy at the moment. Things are just very busy. So I'm a week late with this video, but there was no video last week. But everything is fine. Everything is good. Emma is doing good. My cat. I took her to the vet last week. Just for those of you who are interested, I took her to the vet last week for a blood test again, and all her values are improving. So now she is back on the dental surgery list. They had to remove her from the list because of her. She wasn't stable enough to have the surgery. They wanted to stabilize her first, and that's happened. So I'm just gonna keep her obviously on the medication that she's on for her thyroid and for her potassium, and hopefully she will have surgery soon. There's like a 6-month waiting list, but there is like an acute list, like for those who have like acute tooth issues, and she's on that list. So they will try to make room for her very soon, hopefully just before Christmas, even though my budget is barely allowing it. But obviously people will just get very cheap Christmas presents for me instead, because I have to spend my money on my cat, obviously. But anyway, we're talking about books in this video. Yeah, so I had such a good reading month. It's just absolutely crazy. So first of all, I'm gonna talk about Victober, which is a reading event, or read-along, or readathon. I don't know exactly what it's official called. Probably a reading event where you read Victorian literature in October, basically. So Victorian literature is literature published during the reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901, and was published in the UK, basically, or like, yeah, I think Ireland would have been included in that as well. So Ireland, England, Wales, and Scotland, I think. So anyway, I read. Oh, I love Victorian literature. I haven't read like extreme amount. I read a little bit when I was back in college in my early 20s. I did a degree in English language and literature, and we did read some Victorian literature, obviously. And then I decided for one of my goals for 2024 was to actually read more Victorian literature, because I do really enjoy it. When I read it, I'm like, why don't I read more of it? Because I for the most part enjoy what I've read so far of literature published during that time. So a big chunk of my reading was definitely Victorian, and I read first book that I read, it's a short story. It's called The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. I don't have a hard copy of this. I just popped up on my audiobook app, and I was like, and oh my God, it's so funny. It's absolutely hilarious. So it's about a ghost who is living in this big mansion. Then there are new owners. They're like American family, father, mother, son and daughter, I think. And they just kind of refuse to be scared of this ghost or be scared of a haunted house. For them, it's just ridiculous and old-fashioned. And so the ghost is like, what? You have to be scared of me. But yeah, so it's absolutely hilarious and 100% recommended. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't like, it was a 4-star read. So it was definitely very enjoyable, but, not necessarily the best thing ever. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. And then I read more of Oscar Wilde. I have this book, which is basically his plays. So it's The Importance of Being Earnest and other plays. I had read The Importance of Being Earnest early, like in my early 20s when I was at college. And I loved it. And I decided to reread it this time around, and I loved it again. It's hilarious. So it's one of his drawing room comedies, or kind of social satire comedies type of plays. I think there are like about 4 of them that basically just take place in a drawing room in England, and it's making fun of the kind of upper class, aristocratic hypocrisy and these ethical norms that nobody really abides to, but expects everybody else to abide to, basically. Like Oscar Wilde was very critical of that for, I think, obvious reasons. But I think that this is hilarious. So there are 2 men here who basically are both pretending to be called or to have the name of Ernest. And then there are 2 women who both want to marry men named Ernest. And then, comedy and hilariousness ensues. It was absolutely hilarious, and I gave it 5 stars. So, yeah, I want to watch. There's a movie from this with, what is his name? Rupert Everett, something like that. One of the actors. It is. I remember watching that movie many years ago, and it's hilarious. I really want to try to find it and watch it again. In this book, also, I had Lady Windermere's Fan, which is also one of these drawing room comedies. So Lady Windermere is this young married woman who kind of, through gossip and interactions with people who are like telling her the gossip, starts to think that her husband, that she loves very much, and they have had a really good marriage, even though it's been only, I think, they have a very young child, so it's maybe been a year or 2 years that they've been married. And she's made to believe that he's having an affair because he's been spending time with this woman called Mrs. Erlin. And so it's very much about gossip and the dangers of gossip and what gossip can really destroy things, I think. So anyway, so the plot thickens, who is Mrs. Erlin and what is her husband, Lord Windermere doing with this woman, and her fan is just like the fan that you use to kind of cool yourself or hide your face, is kind of almost like a character in the plot. And it's actually, I think there are actually serious undertones for sure. I think in all of his plays there are definitely serious undertones, but it's just so hilarious. And I think that, for example, the hypocrisy of where someone is talking about these I think they are spinsters, they never talk gossip, but they just remark on it to everyone. So they are not gossiping, they're just talking about the gossip, right? I thought that's the pinnacle of hypocrisy, right? So that was really good. But I mean, there were parts of it that I was just okay, this is okay. So it was a 4-star, it was not a 5-star for me. And then there is A Woman of No Importance, which is another drawing room comedy. And I really enjoy this. This was a 5-star for me. So here we have Mrs. Arbuthnot. I love these names. They are some of the names here are very Agatha Christie-esque. Very Arbuthnot. And her son Gerald, who is just hired to be a personal secretary for Lord Illingworth. And then the plot thickens. His mother is not happy with it, and like, why isn't she happy with it? And stuff like that. Yeah, so I really really enjoyed that, but again had very serious undertone with like the consequences of amoral behavior, which was considered amoral behavior at the time, and a difference in the consequences depending on if you're a man or a woman, and just the unfairness of it, really. So I thought that was a very good play, A Woman of No Importance. And I love the fact that the last sentence in it is, I think, is a man of no importance. What was it? What did he say? Yeah, so on the floor there is a glove lying on the floor that belongs to Lord Illingworth. And then Gerald, the son, comes. Hello, mother. Whose glove is this? You have had a visitor? Who was it? And then Mrs. Arbuthnot. Oh, no one. No one in particular. A man of no importance. So I love the fact that it's kind of been turned around. Oh, that was a spoiler for sure, but I will try to remember to put it in. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had to say it because it's just so... I thought it was a very powerful sentence. So I absolutely love this play. And then there is An Ideal Husband, also a drawing room comedy. And this kind of is revolves around a blackmail scheme. There's a cabinet minister, kind of the notion of the ideal husband, and all sorts of intrigue. And I thought this was also quite funny, but probably the least funny of these 4 drawing room comedies. And then there are a couple of more plays in this book that are 2 other plays that are not part of this kind of high society satire plays. And then first of them is Salome, which is a one-act tragedy, and it was actually originally published in French and then later translated into English. And it's basically the biblical retelling of Salome from the Bible, who I think she was the stepdaughter of Herod. Is that how you say it? Herod, the king of... Was he the king? Yes, I don't know my Bible, obviously, but he's a guy that had something to do with Jesus being executed. So, anyway. No, I think so. Anyway, and then there's the John the Baptist as well. I don't know the original story, but this story was pretty good. And I thought it was a very interesting, maybe I would have got more out of it if I would have known or remembered the story from the Bible more like, that would have been clearer in my mind. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written and interesting, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the last play in this book is A Florentine Tragedy, which is also obviously a tragedy. But this is an unfinished play, which he didn't finish it, Oscar Wilde, but it takes place in Florence, in Italy, in the 16th century. And the main character is Simone, who is a wealthy merchant, his wife Bianca, and a local prince called Giodobardi. And kind of a love triangle thingy between them. I really enjoyed the first part of it. I thought it was funny. And it's so funny also, when the husband and wife kind of reunite and it's like, why did you not tell me you were strong? She tells him and he tells her, why did you not tell me you were beautiful? So basically they become, they become like in love with each other because of the prince kind of interrupting them. Anyway, I thought it was hilarious. The first part, then the rest of the play was boring. I didn't like it, but obviously it was. So in total, I gave it 3 stars. But it would have been interesting. I'm sure if he would have finished it, he would have fixed the later part of it. But I'm very excited that I've now read everything, all the plays, everything in this book, and I can now put it on my shelves with the books I've already read, and that's very exciting. So having this in my ear did not make me hear the static. I just heard it now, so I have to refilm this section. But that's fine, because I love talking about this book, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Oh my God, it's so good. You have to read it. It's so good. It's so good. And it's not, and I think sometimes people are afraid of classics because they think it's gonna be like difficult or like this. I don't think that this is a difficult book to read if you're not into classics and you would like to maybe give it a go. You should definitely read this book. It is quite long, but it's not. It's very suspenseful. It's a sensation novel, which is kind of the precursor, I think, to the thriller mystery detective story. And it's the main character here is Walter Hartright, and he's kind of investigating a certain event regarding or like involving this woman in white. It's told from mostly from big part of the story is from his perspective, but there are also letters where the other characters' perspectives are told. The letters are told from other people's perspectives, kind of going around this, talking about this certain event that happened, and it's really well done. There's excellent villain there. I hated him, and it's just there's such good storytelling. Oh my God, this book! I am so happy that I finally read it, and I cannot wait to read more of Wilkie Collins. I've heard a lot of people. Obviously, I follow a lot of people who read classics and Victorian literature, and everybody loves Wilkie Collins mostly, I think, that I've watched at least. And I can understand that now. Finally, I can understand that. So I cannot wait to read more of him or more of his books. But this one is it's just so nice. And there's just this, it's very suspenseful and kind of thrilling at points. And there's a love story, and there's just this beautiful story of sisters and their relationship and just a family, and it's just it's so good. It's so good. And now we come to another highlight. There were definitely two authors that had these three Victorian authors that just made October just the perfect reading month, and it was so good. And all of these I could listen to as audiobooks, which was so good because it was just such a great way to de-stress and relax after, during a very stressful period in my life at the moment. But so, oh my God. And so the other author was Elizabeth Gaskell. So last year I read Cranford, and I decided not to reread it this year. But I did read all the other stories in this book, and I also read a couple of her Gothic tales. So I'm going to start with those. I don't have those as physical copies. I would love to get her book with the Gothic tales, but I had it on my audiobook app, so I decided to go ahead and listen to them. It was October, and you know what? Even though I don't do necessarily like Halloween themed reading or anything like that, I thought it would be fun. So I read 3 of her Gothic tales. The first one was The Old Nurse's Tale, which is kind of spooky, definitely. This old nurse is telling us the story of her young lady or young child that she's taken care of, and she moves with this child as she's very young to this kind of remote mansion or palace, and so there's a hunting, there's like things happening there that is not necessarily the best thing. It was quite good and somewhat spooky actually, so I gave it 4 stars. Another one was Curious If True, and this one was just weird. Yeah, it was okay. It was a 3-star read for me, but I think that I can just barely count it as a read book. I think I wasn't really paying attention when I was listening to it, so I don't really know what it was about. It felt like it was very unreal and like almost like a dream. So yeah, I didn't like it that much, but I didn't hate it. So it's like middle of the road type of a book, or type of a story. So 3 stars. And then there was The Grey Woman, and this one was also pretty good. And it took place, I think, started in Germany, and then they went to France, and like so it took place in on the continent. And there's definitely like some heavy topics of forced marriage, domestic violence, or at least mental violence or psychological violence, and some very nasty people there. So the main character is just this young woman who is kind of forced into this marriage, and things that happen when she realizes who her husband really is and stuff like that. So yeah, it was very suspenseful. Like I was just like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? But it wasn't like it was a 4-star read. It was okay, definitely good, and I would recommend you read that book, that story as for sure. The Old Nurse's Tale and The Grey Woman, I think, are really good Gothic tales. But yeah, it was fine. But then we come to this book, and again, I listened to all of them as audiobooks. And there are a lot of stories. There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 short stories plus Cranford. And I read all 6 of them. So this book also is finished. There was Mr. Harrison's Confession, a fun little story about a young doctor who moves to this small kind of town/village, starts working with the older doctor there, and kind of being kind of groomed to take over, or trained to take over. And it was a really fun kind of exploration of this small village life. And all the single women wanted to marry him and stuff like that. And yeah, it was a good story, and I gave it 4 stars. We have then The Doom of the Griffiths, which was also really good, very suspenseful, very Gothic. It really caught my it gripped me, and I was just like, I listened to it like that, because it was very suspenseful, as I said. I thought the ending was weird. It kind of ruined it for me. But so basically there's this son in the family who has been raised like very spoiled by everybody. And then the father remarries, and there's a stepson, and there's kind of an estrangement, and things happen. I thought it was very interesting. It takes place, I think, in Wales, so that was really interesting. 4 stars. Then we have Lois the Witch. That was one very good, very good. So it's a historical short story, or shorter story. Very interesting, very well written. I thought it was so interesting to see Gaskell's, or the Victorian take on the Salem witch trials. So it takes place in Salem, in the US, in Massachusetts. And Lois is this English girl who loses her family and moves to Salem, where her uncle, I think it was, I remember correctly, it was her uncle. So she starts to live with her cousins, basically, or his uncle's wife and her cousins. And yeah, it's just, obviously she's Anglican and they are Puritans. And I just think that it's really interesting to see Gaskell's take on the Puritans, because I think Gaskell was quite religious. But yeah, she was like, oh, the Puritans were like completely wrong about things. There was actually a witch trial in here, which I couldn't read about. I just can't read about that. So I skipped that part, like a few pages. But such a sad ending and all those things. And it was very good, very good. Then we have Cousin Phyllis, which was just a very kind of easy-going, very well written and very interesting. And it's about this young man who moves to the countryside, and he moves close to his mother's family, like side of the family. So uncle, I think, or aunt, I can't remember, and cousins. And I think he was like an engineer or something working on the railroads. And his relationship with his cousin Phyllis, basically. And I thought it was so interesting that, so cousin Phyllis is obviously a young girl or a young woman, and he's a young man, but there's not a romance between them, which was very refreshing, actually. And yeah, 4 stars. We had 6 weeks at Heppenheim, which takes place in Germany. I thought that was also very interesting, this German setting. And basically this Englishman is traveling and he gets very sick and he's being nursed by this maid at an inn. And yeah, very interesting and just okay, 4 stars as well. And then this book is finished and very happy about that, as I said. Then we get to another best book of October with The Lady in White and Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. Oh, I love this book. I loved this book. Oh my God. I am absolutely loving Elizabeth Gaskell's writing. So, this is the story of Molly, who is, I think in the beginning she's like 10, something like 10 or 12. And then as she kind of grows up, so maybe it's like 10 years in her life. Her mother has died when she was very young, and so she's lived with her father. They have a very close and loving relationship. Her father is the village doctor, and then he remarries, and she gets obviously a stepmother and a stepsister. And so it just kind of tells the story of those. There's romance in there, but it's very beautiful, slow burn. And it's not like the main, I mean, it is kind of the main theme for sure. It's very kind of Jane Austen-esque, trying to find a husband. But at the same time, there's so many other things that are going on that I think are also very interesting. Oh, it was so good. And I did not realize that this is Elizabeth Gaskell's last book, last writing, and she didn't finish it. So she had basically the last chapter left when she died. So it is unfinished. Although I think that you kind of know what is going to happen in the last chapter, but it's not complete. So I thought that was so sad. Oh, just almost finished. But yeah, this was delightful. Absolutely delightful. Another classic that I think that you can definitely read, and it's not going to be too difficult apart from the length, probably, if you're not used to classics, because it was not difficult in regards to like the language and stuff like that. So good. So those were the books that I read for Victober. Oscar Wilde, Wilkie Collins, and Elizabeth Gaskell. And I had the absolute wonderful time. Like I've said, it was delightful, it was wonderful, and just what I needed for October. And I did also want to read, I had put this on my TBR, or pile of possibilities, Edgar Allan Poe. Obviously he's not Victorian, he's American, or was American, and I think he passed away very early in the Victorian period, if I remember correctly. But I did want to read him because like it was October and it was, spooky or gothic or whatever, but I didn't get to it. So that one will have to be read at a later point. But I had so much fun in Victober, taking part in the Victober event, and I would 100% recommend that you check out that event for next year. And I'm gonna link the hosts of the event in my description so that you can, if you hadn't heard of it, or you haven't, if you're curious, you can go check out their channels, because some of them did like vlogs, and like Katie at Books and Things definitely did several videos talking a lot about Victorian literature, so that you should definitely check that out, because I'm sure you can find something there that you may want to read as well. But of course, this was not everything I read. Of course not. Like, that's not my jam. Of course, there was Agatha Christie. Because I love Agatha Christie. So the first book that I read was actually Poirot's Christmas, and I don't own that. So that's one on my list that I need to try to figure out how to get, because I would love to own that. I really loved that one. That was a 5-star read for me. It was excellent, really good plot, and a twist in the plot. Like Agatha Christie is very good. We have Simeon Lee, who's a multimillionaire, nasty old man, and he invites his entire family that are kind of estranged from each other to his house for Christmas. He's also written to Poirot because of, I think he tells Poirot that diamonds have been stolen or something like that. And then Poirot comes there and I think he wrote to another, now I remember. He wrote to some policeman to come to his house because diamonds had been stolen. Then he gets murdered, and Poirot is visiting another policeman who is also sent to, so Poirot comes into investigating the crime. A very classic locked room mystery and whodunit. And it was very well done. Brilliant. Really funny bits about Poirot. Like, he's like sitting there by this beautiful, cozy wood fire, and he's just thinking, I would rather have central heating. I don't know. I thought Poirot, in some books, Poirot is a little bit, because he's not the perfect character at all. But in this book, he was kind of just delightful. Then we have Sad Cypress. I do have these books copies, but I did listen to all of them narrated by Hugh Fraser. Just so you know, that's my jam. Hugh Fraser is my jam for Hercule Poirot books for sure. But anyway, Sad Cypress. So this one is a little bit different. It's a courtroom drama. He didn't write a lot. He did write a few of those, or at least where there are parts of the books take place in the courtroom. But yeah, so this started as a courtroom drama, and then it kind of changes into this kind of retrospective when they're like telling the story of what happened. And sometimes that is also done through letters. Actually, this one was quite emotional in places, which is a little bit different. I generally don't get emotional reading or listening to Agatha Christie. So the plot revolves around Laura Wellman, who is a wealthy older woman, and her young companion, both of who die by poisoning, and the lady who is accused of murdering them. And then Poirot is brought in to investigate. I thought the ending was a little bit far-fetched, but overall I really enjoyed it, and it's 4 stars for me. Then we have One to Buckle My Shoe. I have it here on this, the English, the UK title here, but it's called The Patriotic Murders or an Overdose of Death in the US cover. But One to Buckle My Shoe. So here we have Chief Inspector Japp, and which is this. I think this is the final book that Japp appears in. So Poirot is investigating the death of his dentist. I think it's really funny, the dentist jokes, and the dentist like, ooh, everybody can relate to the fear of going to the dentist. Anyway, I really loved it. And I thought the plot was excellent, and this was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved this one. We have Evil Under the Sun. So here Poirot is on holiday in Devon, and a beautiful woman is murdered, and of course Poirot investigates. I thought the plot was interesting and fun and well done. Agatha Christie often writes these very obnoxious Americans. And you could say that there's an obnoxious American lady in this book. I thought she was actually just kind of funny. And her husband was like, she's like, he's like, yes, darling. No, yes, darling. Or something. Anyway, that was funny. And 5 stars. And then the last Agatha Christie was 5 Little Pigs, or Murder in Retrospect. Poirot investigates a murder that took place 16 years earlier, where this kind of artist or a painter is murdered. His wife is convicted of the murder, but their daughter isn't convinced. And, so I really enjoyed Poirot in this book as well. He was very kind of sympathetic and kind, which is not always the case. And yeah, I thought this was fun. It was enjoyable. 4 stars. So now we have basically the last book that I finished in the month of October, and that is my Halldór Laxness read. This one is called Under the Glacier, or Kristnihald undir jökli. And this is an hilarious book, absolutely hilarious. There's some interesting characters. So basically we have the main character. He's an emissary from the Bishop of Iceland. So in the Icelandic church, we have a national state church. The bishop is the highest role or highest kind of place you can be within the church. And so he sends this emissary to a tiny place in under the Snæfellsnes glacier, and to investigate a very strange parish and a priest who seems to have lost his faith alongside the parish. So there's some very interesting social commentary, cultural commentary that is very on the spot. But it's very much a satire, but it's also just hilarious. And there are a couple of main characters here who have become kind of like cultural icons. And it's also funny because one of the characters' name is Hnallþóra. I don't know her name in the translation, but she's like making these cakes, and these elaborate, huge cakes with like cream and in Icelandic culture, you would now, if you're gonna make a cake like that, you call it Hnallþóra. So that's the name of the cake. The name of the character has become name of this cake that is that you would make like for wedding receptions or confirmation receptions and stuff like that. So like big feasts. So that's kind of become part of Icelandic culture, and that's kind of a sign, or like that's how important Laxness's books are within the Icelandic culture. So they're a huge cultural icon basically. And it was a good book. I mean, not my favorite of his, but I really enjoyed it, and it was 4 stars for me. Then we have Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, and I have not finished it. I am enjoying it. I love the world building, the magic system, the characters. I think I've said before as well, I don't think that the second part of the series is as gripping to me as the first trilogy. It's still very fun and interesting. I'm in a period now in my PhD where I'm writing my literature review for my dissertation. So I'm reading billions of books and articles every day. And I just don't want to read a physical book when I finally get home and want to relax in the evenings. So I have been listening to audiobooks and loving that. And I don't have this as an audiobook, so it's been suffering for sure. But that's fine. I will get through it very slowly, and it's fine. I'm trying to just read maybe 10 pages a day or something like that. And like I said, I'm still enjoying it. It's just been very slow. And also, I have not gotten to Bear Town by Fredrik Backman. And I'm very sad about that, because I wanted to read it with Ellen made book club, with a book club by Ellen. But I think I'm just going to put it on ice for now, again, because I just don't feel like reading physical books, and I don't have it as an audiobook. So, and also, it's a trilogy. So this is the first book in the trilogy, and I think that I might want to read the trilogy kind of just in one go. And I don't have the other 2 books. So I'm thinking that I'm just going to put it on ice and try to acquire the other books, and then read them maybe at some point next year. I think that's gonna be the best course of action in regards to that. Yeah. So those were all the books that I read in October. And like I said, it was absolutely fantastic reading month. I had so much fun enjoying all these absolutely fantastic audiobooks. I think most of them, my Oscar Wilde plays, I forgot to say, were a performance by is it LA Theater Club or something like that? So it was like listening to these radio plays. Oh, it was so fantastic. I absolutely enjoyed it. And yeah, I had an excellent month, as you can say. Definitely have an audiobook era for sure, but it's been really good. And so far also November has been excellent. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you have read any of these books, have any opinions about these books, let's talk about it in the comments and have a chat. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.